This is The Great Outdoors with Jason White, exploring the great outdoors in Pennsylvania and beyond. Brought to you by the Mariana Outdoorsmen Association and by Wild Acres Farm, Fishery, and Regulated Hunting Grounds. Now, The Great Outdoors with Jason White.
Hello, friends. I'm Jason White. Welcome to The Great Outdoors. I have a very exciting show today lined up. I have some friends and guests from the Pennsylvania Farm Bureau from here in southwestern Pennsylvania. But before I dive into that and before we dive into a great discussion about ag tags and almost deer management assistance program via the Pennsylvania Game Commission, I need to give a special thanks to our sponsors. You can join the Mariana Outdoorsman Association today at marianaoutdoors.com. Again, that's marianaoutdoors.com. 2.5 miles of private trout fishing, 6 different species of trout, 400 acres of upland bird hunting, 1,000-yard rifle range, 2 pistol ranges, opportunities to shoot your semi-automatic and really to poke it out to 1,000 yards. Check us out, marianaoutdoors.com. Upland bird hunts, whitetail deer hunts, turkey hunts, trophy trout fishing trips. Check us out at 10mileco.org. Stands for 10 Mile Creek Outfitters, who manages and operates the Wild Acres Farm, Fishery, and Regulated Hunting Grounds. So if you're looking to book any of these hunts, got some amazing amenities. Again, 10mileco.org, or give us a call at 724-579-0924. Well, I don't want to waste any more time. I want to jump into this conversation because, as always, I try to, throughout the year, whatever's the hot button, whatever's the thing that we really need to hit on, whether that's planting the fields, plowing, putting out minerals for wildlife, so on and so forth. But right now, the Pennsylvania Game Commission opened up the Ag Tag program, which is a regulation. Just so everybody knows this, it is not law. It is a regulation that is accepted by the Board of Commissioners. And what happened is at the January meeting, Ag Tags got brought up. And under the way that it works in Pennsylvania, the commissioners have to basically have 2 voting meetings in a row before their voted recommendations as regulations ultimately become adopted as part of the code under the Game Commission. So before we dive into this, today I have some folks from the Farm Bureau sitting to my left, if you can see me. Daryl Becker, president of the Fayette County Farm Bureau. Daryl, introduce yourself, please. A pleasure having all of you. We're going to go right down the line. I'm going to introduce everybody, and we're going to get rolling.
Jason, it's nice to be back with you again. Daryl Becker from Fayette County. So let me start off by saying I want to thank my fellow Farm Bureau members that are going to be here today to help our conversation about this. And I wanted to make an announcement that on March the 15th, which is a Saturday, the Fayette County Farm Bureau and the Fayette County Commissioners will be having our 8th Agricultural Roundtable event combining agriculture with legislation. And our topic will be crop damage from deer and basically all the items that are involved in House Bill 67. Is that House Bill or Senate Bill?
Senate Bill 67.
Senate Bill 67, which is an omnibus of about 7 or 8 different items. Coming to this event will be our state. We're very excited to have our state president, Chris Hoffman, will be one of the moderators, along with Steve Smith, who is the new chairman of the Pennsylvania Game Commission, and this is an exciting event. Those who want to attend, and I welcome you all, please RSVP to my phone number, which is 724-984-2882, and we'll repeat this at the end of the show. So, my brother farmers, introduce yourself, and let's get going.
I'm Jeff Gardner. I'm from Washington County. We're a grain and livestock farmer and got some problem with these deer, and hopefully we can get things worked out.
Andrew Vore, Washington County Farm Bureau, grain and cattle farmer, as well deer problems.
My name is Jim Lindley. We're in Scenery Hill, based out of Scenery Hill, Pennsylvania. We do corn and soybeans primarily, some other grains, some hay, and the deer. This is a big topic for us as we've had a lot of problems with it in the past few years, a lot of deer damage.
Well, I thank you guys for all coming on because I think this is a ripe opportunity. When I had saw that for those that don't know, I sit on the Wildlife and Fisheries Committee for the Pennsylvania Farm Bureau, and we've really been jockeying hard and really putting forth a lot of effort to try to make positive change for farmers and also building relationships with the general outdoorsman community, and which I think is making huge strides. This upcoming event that Daryl referenced, some of the big topics are going to be the ag tags and the deer management assistance program. Some of the guests that we have here today already are dealing with some of these programs, so that's what we really want to get, for people to understand. This is farmers and sportsmen need to work together and almost have a symbiotic relationship, because what is not always understood is that these farmers are providing food for the general public. They're providing basically needs for the country, and it is very critical that the sportsman community understands how critical they are, not only to management of wildlife conservation, but also if there's no food, guess what? Your food prices go through the absolute roof. Look at the egg market right now. Different things like the different diseases, etc., impacting food prices and commodities. So, what we got to realize is wildlife management has a huge impact. So I'm going to dive into this. So we have kind of like a working agenda that we've been working on with our Wildlife and Fisheries Committee. One of the things that's been a big problem, and I know you guys, we talked about this earlier, is regarding to the tag limits. If any of you want to jump in on this, like the difficulty that you've had with getting farmers and shooters, kind of give your experiences so people can better understand, like, what hurdles you're having.
So this is Jim Lindley here again. We do corn and soybeans, several farms in Washington County, and it's all it takes a big volume of acreage to even make a profit, and it's just been difficult to get trying to reach out and get as many good hunters as we can, and different problems. Like, we did start the ag tag program. I think this was our second year, and we've had so much damage, but a lot of the problem for us was just the communication. We as farmers really didn't understand how to get involved. And then we were scared off by a lot of things, like you had to put it up for public hunting, you had to let whoever come hunt. A lot of issues like that came up, but now we're starting to understand the system a little bit, and it'd be nice to get more good hunters involved. So this is our second year with the ag tag program, and I think it's having an effect. I hope.
Well, certainly, I know one of the discussions right now is about the tag limits. So currently, as it sits today in the current regulation, you're only allowed 4 tags per shooter. And what's really important that I think that everybody understands is this is absolutely none of these discussions are about eradicating, or even, this isn't even necessarily a culling. What we are talking about is when these programs were set up, there's a formula that the Game Commission came up with. It's called the tillage or tillable acres. It's 5 acres per deer per tag, and then additionally, there's actually forested area that I think it's 50. I think that's the right number. But you can get additional tags based upon wooded space. What's critical is these programs. Everybody has to understand. A farmer could be planting crops in their fields. They could be doing hay. They could be needing those fields for just actual for consumption for their cattle or whatever species that they're raising. The other thing, timber's a huge industry in Pennsylvania, and there's been a lot of damage to different forested undergrowth that people certainly have felt the implications of that. If you do not have regeneration when it comes to forested areas, what ends up happening is that ends up hurting the timber industry. So that's another thing, just to bring some awareness to particular situations. You guys are talking about confusion, I would say, like miscommunication. And that's what Daryl, this event that we're having with the collaboration between the Farm Bureau, the elected officials, the Pennsylvania Game Commission, Department of Agriculture, trying to break the gaps, because the way that these, and I think you guys can attest to this, the way that these programs are written are not necessarily functional or easy to understand from the general public's perspective. Jeff, I know I wanted to ask you this question, because do you think that it's easy to find the information, and
No,
where do you
it's Jeff Gardner. No, there's nothing on the Game Commission's website. I've had guys come out. I mean, they've had to go to Ligonier to find out who's on them. I mean, there's their press releases and stuff. There's nothing on there about the ag tags or In fact, we were shooting deer last year, and the one neighbor said, "What are you guys shooting?" "Oh, we're shooting deer." Well, deer season's not in. They didn't even realize it, and trying to get the word out and. People just don't realize it. And there's a lot of people that, hey, I still like to have one more deer for my deep freeze in the spring, to have hamburgers here in the spring, or, some guys cut the deer up for, to feed their dogs and stuff. So that way, they're healthy and stuff to try to help their budget and stuff. But, we need the Game Commission needs to step up here and say, hey, ag tag season's open. Go help a farmer and stuff, I talked to him, we were at the farm show, and the guy there says, hey, yeah, there's nothing on there. We need to come up with something. So, so that the hunting public knows that they can come hunt on these farms. And it's a good way to come meet your local farmer and stuff and find a new place to hunt. People say they can't find a place to hunt. Well, this is a good opportunity to welcome, come greet your local farmer and find a place to hunt. So,
well, I will say that I've never been a big proponent of whether the lands that I have or knowing the experience I've had with other farmers. I've never went on to a farm where I got permission that I didn't offer to either post the property or volunteer in some capacity to help with something. And I'm really excited because the last episode I was talking about this. There's going to be this new Master Hunter program, which is, I'm sure you guys are well aware, when you're 12 years old and you go through hunter safety, ethics and cutting firewood and opening and closing gates, those are things that can be lost. And it's good for us to have a program that can be a refresher and for, I think, farmers to know that somebody truly cares and truly wants to be a good hunter.
Sure. Yeah.
Because just because somebody gets a hunting license doesn't necessarily mean that they're good hunters.
And these,
land steward.
Yeah.
Right, and these are good times for kids to come to hunt too. They don't have all the pressure of all the people out there. The deer are a little bit more relaxed. And it opens the kids up. So they don't have to worry about other people shooting their deer, and they can kind of take their time and get sighted on them good and make a good shot and get a good clean kill, and and then the kids are happy. And but same thing when the kids go back to school and say, I got a deer yesterday, people's like, well, deer season's not in, because they don't realize it. But it's good for kids, and these sports clubs need to work with the farmers and stuff, and they can get their kids out there and have them have some days where they can get a field.
I think another thing is a lot of people don't really understand the scope of this problem that we face as farmers. It is dire straits in our world. We have made no money last 2 years. Like us personally, we have lost average the past 2 years about $200,000 a year.
That's 200,000.
Yes, 200,000
Off
per
of how
year.
many acres would
We
you
plant
say?
around 700. This year we had a little over 700 acres of corn and soybeans. And the cost, that's not profit margin. That is the cost that it takes to produce that is crazy money. And then we have to pay for the fertilizer and the seed and all our time, the equipment cost. It's insane amounts. So it's a big gamble. And granted, we had a drought. The past 2 years have been drought. And just that drought just magnified. We always have the past few years, the deer population has been coming up, and we've been noticing more trouble. But just the past 2 years have been insane, and we just have to find a way to get this population under control. A lot of the old school hunters that we talk to, they don't like the doe hunt because they're like, oh, I want to save the. But I think we've crossed that threshold a while ago.
And this is another thing I know we had talked about off the radio, but the culture. I know, growing up, people hunting and trapping, and I would say butchering and processing your own animal was like kind of a way of life at one time in this country.
Right.
And I feel like we've kind of gotten to an extreme to where it's now impacting food pricing. And when you talk about, you're impacting your livelihoods, I think that's something that's important and imperative for people to understand. The Pennsylvania Game Commission, and I'm even going to expand that to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, because certain people are being impacted by migratory birds. I could sit here and talk for days about how bad the migratory bird situation is. There's just, federally, we have no I don't think, a really good grasp of how bad it is. And if anybody wants to look into that, go look at what's all happened with the poultry and the viruses that are spreading, the geese. There's just a lot going on there. So
Gotta get buy eggs.
yeah,
Gotta
just
get buy eggs.
go buy eggs right now. So there you
Some
go.
places milk.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of implications here of what we're talking about. When, if you want to give a good example, imagine opening up your front door. Imagine allowing wild animals in your house, like deer or whatever. Open up your fridge and just allowing them to just eat all your food. That's basically what these people are dealing with to when they're trying to grow crops to ultimately, go for different goods and commodities. I know in Fayette County we actually have a few different vegetable growers that have had mass issues. Daryl, you're certainly welcome to
The
chime
biggest
in on that.
vegetable grower in Fayette County, the Dudas Farm. Everybody's heard of Dudas sweet corn. I don't know if they're going to even be in business. They filed for Chapter 12 2 years ago. Last year, between the drought and deer damage, they lost everything. So, this is critical, and it's like people are going about their daily lives, and they don't even know this is happening.
Well,
Yeah, and that's where people don't realize, you see where that farmer's out there planting that field, and then, after about a week or 10 days, it starts to germinate and pop through the ground, and then there's the deer eating it down, and you look at that field later and say, well, why is the bare spots? They must have trouble planting. It's not. It's because of the deer. The same thing when the corn grows later. That corn early starts to change color, and the tassel starts to turn red and stuff. That's because the deer ate the corn in the silk stage and stuff, and, and then you get no product off of that plant. It's just, you paid all the fertilizer for it, but it's stuff that they do that people don't realize what the damage the deer do to that corn.
I want to talk about some things. I know I talked about the hunting limit, some other confusing points, the price differential. Right now, there's different prices between ag tags, DMAP, and even a regular doe license, which is critical for everybody to know and understand. Again, when we talk about simplifying and streamlining these processes, these farmers, property owners, leaseholders have to basically do a paper application every year. To me, that's utterly ridiculous. It needs to be streamlined, especially after somebody gets registered. Now there's a hunt fish app to where anybody that has access to a computer can go on and access it. So, those present technological opportunities. Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, this year, Jason, we the way we start doing it with our farming, we plant a few of our own farms, and then we plant several landowners are kind enough to let us farm their properties. And so what we've done is we put in for the applications, and when we get them, of course, again, it's one tag for every 5 acres. And so what we've been doing is we, for the most part, give them back to the property owners, the other farms, and then we try to divvy those out, and hopefully they have friends and family, and try to make it a fun event for them to have a little bit extra hunting season and go out and enjoy. And it seems to be working, but there's some confusion involved. Like a lot of people don't know that it is just antlerless. Mm-hmm. And the season right now is in from I believe it was
February 1 to
February 1st to April 15th. People are just starting to catch wind of it, but it's not real publicized. A lot of people, even the farmers, it was hard for all us farmers here to just understand these programs and to know what the opportunities were for us to do something.
Well, I think what people don't realize is say you have 7 does on your property. I'll just be hypothetical. 7 does, especially when they're eating well in the winter, could end up being double, if not triple, that number. And that's why it's so critical that everybody understands, like, management. Typically, when you're managing a doe, potentially that doe could double or triple numbers literally in one season. And I can tell you, whenever the fawns drop, and I know this from my experiences, usually July and August are the most devastating months that I've experienced. So there's other programs that fall underneath of crop damage, which that actually is a law that was passed by the legislature, which that's a whole nother can of worms. But for this discussion, the ag tags and the DMAP and to streamline and I would say better communicate with everybody. Another thing I want to highlight on is reporting. We don't have any I mean, geez, oh, peace. You can go buy a cup of coffee nowadays, and there's QR codes on practically everything. The concept and idea to put a QR code on a tag so people could better report, I think, goes without saying. Hunter Sharing the Harvest. Hunter Sharing the Harvest is a nonprofit organization. They're not a government arm or an entity. They're what will be classified as a non-governmental agency or a non-governmental organization, NGO. They need to be properly funded if we're going to have programs for agriculture, for landowners.
We're helping. Mind you, we're helping the needy people. We're getting that program is getting those deer
to food banks
and the people that really need them could realize that.
And the Game Commission is very well funded now. If you look at their financial report on the last one, they're very well funded with over $500 million in their general fund.
See, I haven't bringing up that point. I know we had talked about the monies generated from what I really want to get the full breakdown because I'm sure that's what you're seeing on their income and expense reports. But what do they have in their reserve funds? There's got to be reserve accounts because money they're not. Like, for example, DCNR and some of these other state agencies, the money that they get every year, like PennDOT, they either spend it or lose it. Game Commission and Fish Commission do not apply to that conversation. So they have rainy day funds and they have basically reserve savings accounts. So I'm curious to know, to your point about the money, just in 2 years, what was that, 2 years ago when they made $350 or $400 million off of oil and gas alone? I mean, it was an astronomical amount of money. I know they didn't invest all that back into the counties because that's been a sour spot across the state about, they're not paying nearly the tax, obviously the property taxes, and that's an impact.
They're not managing the game lands very good. I mean, they burn and stuff, but then they don't go back and put any lime or fertilizer or anything to try to help the soils on the game lands, which they need help to. And that would help the farmers by the deer staying over there instead of them just managing them for birds,
Yeah, they like to come eat our soybeans and corn
and then they'll go back over there.
Yeah.
Well, that's so we passed a policy this past year at the state convention, and that policy states that the Farm Bureau recommends that half of monies generated from natural resources of game lands must stay or be spent within that property and or that county for the mission of the commission. And I think that's very critical to what you guys are saying because they're not doing that. Because when you have a capitalism, obviously economy and a government, you can't just continue to take. You got to put. It's no different than farming fields. Right. You got to lime and fertilize. The fields.
Right. You have to be a good steward of the land.
And they're taking, and they're not putting enough back in. And to your point, even about birds, boy, go to Scenery Hill. Go look at that game lands. I actually took one of the commissioners there, and it was kind of in disbelief of how bad it is. Jagger bushes, pricker bushes are not.
Jeff Gardner.
That game land. That game land is
the guy that used to farm that.
That game land is over 600 acres over there now, and they're lucky all during deer season to kill 5 deer. And we're over the hill, and we have 400 acres, and we kill 60. So whose management doing better?
Jeff used to get to farm that, but they changed things.
Yeah,
up.
they don't want farmers on the game lands now. It was making things
Used
better
to be,
back there.
Yeah, it was.
Well, I actually believe, this is my opinion, even if you didn't harvest the crops, I'm just being hypothetical, but a very worst case scenario, if you just planted them, if they had farmers come on and plant them, so that, to your point, to help with the wildlife, because at the end of the day, it's all about food.
Right.
Well, we used to plant the food plots and stuff over there for them, and then all that seed dried up and stuff, and they don't think they need it. They want their switchgrass and all that stuff, which the deer won't eat. They'll lay in it, but they won't eat it. The stuff the deer want to eat. And anything they plant, those deer will walk through to go to a soybean field, and I promise you that.
And I've talked about this, on different episodes. There's certain things, especially what we're talking about right now, things like lab, which was it's like a Jamaican bean. Things like buckwheat. There's certain things that could be planted, especially for cover crops and incorporated into different seed mixtures. So, for example, that game lands get stocked with some upland birds. you could plant things like that, sunflowers that deer will love to eat in the middle of the summer.
And even plant some like forage beans and stuff, that have a good grow. They'll grow tall and stuff, and a deer will browse on them and stuff. And that would help to put that in with your mixture, and plant some crimson clover, which it's more nutritious than white clover and stuff, to try to get some of that stuff. But the problem is those grasses and stuff you plant won't stay good because they won't put any lime down to help get your pH right and stuff to keep that stuff and to keep it healthier. Putting lime down makes the ground sweeter and stuff, and the deer will stay if they have some lime there. It's like the little thing you don't see that helps to hold them.
So even what I'm saying about spending money, the Gamlands, they should be buying lime locally at different stores,
Right.
renting equipment locally within the county, buying seed, I would hope, from different local distributors, potentially hiring farmers or contractors to come in and plant. Not to mention, I've actually had a lot of conversations, like they don't even do like the forestry, I don't want to call it removal services, but when you talk about some of these areas, they're coming in with like machinery to do some clearing to make better habitat. They're not doing nearly enough when it comes to the habitat side of things, and when you talk about trying to hold the wildlife.
If you're talking about money, you know what? We know there's less hunters, and we're trying to get the youth. There's a lot of ways we're trying to get the youth. Why doesn't the Game Commission try to set up some hunter education programs in the schools so they can go in there and talk to these kids and explain to them how great hunting is? Get outside, experience nature, instead of sitting on your cell phone.
Well, the other thing, we have clearly, like I said earlier, we have a cultural problem. There's been such a lack of, I don't know. It's almost like, when you think of firearms, we've culturally, I hate to say this nationally, like demonized anybody that uses a gun
Right.
And what everybody has to understand is hunting is a necessity for farmers. It's a necessity for culture. It's a necessity for good habitat and conservation. And if we do not all work together,
Right, and it keeps kids busy and keeps them out of trouble. It's something they can learn, and then they'll say, "Hey, I'd rather go hunting today and stuff instead of going and hanging out at the street corner and stuff and getting in trouble." It teaches them things. So,
Awesome, and just just like butchering animals and so forth, like Jason was saying, heck, that's like getting to be like a lost art form. People don't know that, and for survival, that's important stuff.
and I want to highlight about butchering. So butchering is something that is I would say a blue collar job. It's something we're losing butchers left and right, even deer processors, which that's another conversation. I've had a lot of people talking to me about the FDA and USDA, and I guess it'd be more of the USDA, the whole butchering standards about, the fact that we can go, for example, a deer processor can process meat and give it to the needy, and there's a set of standards, and that's acceptable. But then if you butcher a cow or a pig, it's kind of looked at completely. The standards are like way different. You got to have somebody to be there watching you. So I think I think there needs to be really like a conversation at some point. Like that's a whole nother conversation. But I think that's something that needs to be looked at and discussed and figure out ways that maybe we can do it a little bit better, because I think we're deterring people.
well, that's like these deer being processed. You see this stuff on the news now, like this fresh pet. Some of these deer, why can't they be processed and, through hunt and share the harvest and give them some money? But, they could go to the local humane society and stuff, to feed the dogs and the cats and stuff, the prisoners. There's things that deer meat could go for and be good, and it would be good feed for them, and it would help them get their protein for the day.
I think that's what a lot of what they're trying to accomplish here is to get all these things connected, get these people connected, processors with hunters, with farmers. This has to happen. I'm telling you, fellas, we are it's dire straits in our world.
Yeah, absolutely.
For us as farmers.
Right.
I don't think you can overstate that. You could say that every 2 seconds, and you got to get through.
And I don't know. Part of the problem is lack of hunting. You have used to be just 20 years ago there was a dairy farm on every. And now they're not doing that, so you have less and less farmers. We have trouble, when it's just your own farm, one farm. If you're doing, you can maybe manage the deer, use crop damage. We can shoot them legally, and as crop damage. But when we branch out and try to do lots of acreage and everything, we don't have the manpower to do that. So we need good good hunters to come and help us with that.
To partner with us.
Yeah, to partner with us. Yes. Yes.
Well,
And hopefully in the process they can enjoy it, maybe pass along, be good for and team up with hunters sharing the harvest. There's maybe you should somebody needs to bring that up so people know that that's available.
Talking about soybeans, Rich Bird, the biggest soybean grower in Fayette County, went to one of his fields one time, pulled his cultivator in, looked around, and turned around and left because there wasn't enough soybeans left on the field from the deer eating them to justify using the fuel to harvest the soybeans. This is like bass backwards.
Daryl, I'm here to tell you that happened to us on 3 or 4 farms. We totally moved the combines in. You check them. When I sprayed them, month and a half, 2 months before that, they were there. They were damaged. But, I mean, to tell you, some of those farms
Wiped out.
bare dirt. I mean, there was bare dirt, brown. They
They're-
caught them.
That's like the soybeans.
I mean, these farms average like 30 acres apiece too, and there was nothing there to combine.
That's like these soybeans. They started out with conventional, and then we went to Roundup, and then they had the Liberties, and then the Dicambas, and now the new Enlist. The technology's all there, but the problem is the deer eat better than the technology grows them. It just there's got to be something to do about it. So
There's a farm on Lone Pine Mariana Road. I don't know who the guy's name is, but he planted corn last year. And I'm telling you what, it was almost like you could see it almost like a fingerprint. Literally where the woods started on both sides of this field, there was nothing. And then it just slowly, the corn would taper up.
And then in the bottom right there by Lone Pine School.
Yeah. And then
I know that guy.
right in the middle, there was some corn, but there wasn't enough. He lost every bit of half of the field. Yeah. He literally lost probably half of it, and you'd drive by and be like, "My gosh, look at how badly the deer are just absolutely devastating."
Yep. Yeah.
The other thing is, but when we talk about butchers, I want to highlight the fact that butchers are not being compensated for reporting. They're actually not even reporting harvest, which I think is a humongous piece of conservation. So, like when I say that, this whole idea about tags having QR codes. There's a golden opportunity not only for hunters to more easily provide that conservation information, but also to collect it at a butcher shop. And last but not least, they're not being compensated for their fair market value for storage of the bins to hold heads. And the reason that's happening is that the Game Commission gets heads to collect aging data. And to me, that's a huge problem because I don't care who it is out there, if you're going to get somebody to utilize space, you charge rent. So I think that that's another thing that needs to be brought up. A big thing, and I know this is a controversial issue, but baiting. I need to highlight this. There is a regulation that is on the books as of today. It's 147.552B, and it allows baiting is permitted reflective of current practices in Southeast PA. That is under that wildlife management unit. So like one of the recommendations with the Farm Bureau is certainly to hopefully expand that over the summer months. Not looking to upset the apple cart during the hunting season, but certainly during the summer months, it would be a lot better for a farmer to put out 50 pounds of, even heck, 500 pounds of corn and have the deer go to that and be able to harvest some for their needs to address crop damage. And I also want to reiterate, again, the number of deer being harvested off of these properties or parcels is based off of a formula provided by the Game Commission so that these guys can manage the deer because the hunting community it currently is not, keeping the numbers.
It's not getting it.
Right, it's not keeping up.
And the other thing I want to highlight, because I think it's very important, and I know you guys can attest to this, farms 40 years ago, 30 years ago, you had fence lines, and people trapped along those fence lines. You go now in Southwest PA, there's so many farms that are overgrown, and they've basically created habitat ideal. It's almost like rats. I hate to say it. We've created habitat absolutely ideal. It's the same premise about migratory birds. When I talk about hawks and different species like that, the Game Commission's putting out millions of pheasants a year. Well, where the heck do you think not only that these birds go to then eat their food, they're getting a smorgasbord. And then guess what? Next thing you know, they're reproducing at astronomical rates. And it's become basically, I feel we have like wing rats in this state. It's so bad as to how that's impacted us, and also how it's spreading disease in the same capacity. There's discussions on the table right now with the Game Commission about expanding the late muzzleloader season to expand to inline muzzleloaders. Certainly, in my opinion, that should be rifles, because they're already expanded. I think it's 2 management units have expanded to rifle.
Right, like 2B, and I think some of that out in the southeast, 5A or 5B.
Yeah.
Yeah, but after Christmas on the ag tags, I mean, they should be rifles. You should be allowed to use them, because you're only hunting on certain farms. You're not hunting in the whole unit. So, like, if people want to go hunt on the game lands, that's fine, and a rifle's not going to come over there and bother you. But if you're on our farm, we should have a little bit more say into what we get to use, to try to use the proper management tools to manage the deer. So that people can learn to harvest.
Because I can vouch to say a muzzleloader flintlock is definitely not a tool to be managing deer on your property.
Plus, after Christmas, it was in, kids are home from school, and it would let kids go to hunt and stuff.
Encourage them to hunt.
Which would help hunter participation and help the license sales too at the end to bring more revenue in.
Turn them into good adults to help in the learning curve of growing up.
Well, the one thing, there's a lot of things on the table right now, which I'm glad that we're having this conversation, because I hope as this video even gets shared across the state, I hope that people understand, this is impacting your food prices. This is impacting the grocery stores. This is impacting bottom lines of everybody. And again, everybody here, whether it's Farm Bureau or the sporting community, we all want to live in unison and harmony. I know we had this conversation earlier. It's not about having deer on a property or any wildlife for that matter. It's when it becomes so bad that I can attest to this about hawks. I literally sent an email to USDA yesterday because I had 4 hovering right above my pens, and it's like it just gets to the point where it's a complete and utter infestation, and it's a destructive means to your trying to do for your existence. So, I just ask anybody listening to this or watching this, be open-hearted, be open-minded, be considerate of other people's, because this is impacting you, whether you realize it or not. It's absolutely impacting you, and it's about everybody being willing to listen to each other, being able to have conversations and work together.
Just look with the deer stuff. Just look at the damage to cars. We spoke with some people in the insurance business, and it's putting them out of business. The amount of car damage is insane, and that's just another.
Yeah, and that's like to try to get rid of the deer. You got to think outside the box, And some of this is they have all those coyote hunts now and stuff, and you tell guys, no, you're not allowed to coyote hunt. So you just come shoot the deer, and they look at you like you're funny. But we need the coyotes right now to help us to try to work on the deer.
I personally think it would be nice if we could have some hunting similar to coyote hunting for the deer, where guys could go, maybe night shoot or whatever. I don't know what you guys think about that.
Well, it's I think there needs to be a lot of ideas. I certainly agree the coyotes are helpful, especially in the fawning season. The thing that I know, though, and I can attest to this, because I have so many trail cameras around my property, they're more apt, especially this time of year, to go after a pheasant, a rabbit, somebody's cat, somebody's dog. There's certain times of the year, it's like we were talking earlier about having different ammunition, different tools in a toolbox. Certainly, there's a lot. We just got to open this all up and look at it. Like, how did we get this far down this bad path? Yes. And how do we get back on a good?
How do we correct this shit?
We got to correct. It's almost like the Titanic not only hit the iceberg, but we're like bebopping off of different icebergs, and we're sinking, and we need to fix it.
I think you will all agree that a half-hour, 45-minute show does not do this justice. And I'll go back to my plug for the March 15th event, which will be at the Fayette County Fairgrounds in the Fiddler's Building at 9 o'clock. Food will be provided. If you're going to come, please RSVP to Daryl Becker at 724-984-2882. All the people will be there that need to hear everything that we've been talking about and more.
The big thing, I want to share with everybody is that, this is an open door conversation. Anybody that's got any ideas, suggestions, we're actually going to have suggestion sheets available at Daryl's event hosted by the Fayette County Farm Bureau
And the county commission.
and the county commissioners and the game commission and the state farm bureau and all the contributors that are making it happen. But it requires everybody to be, again, open-minded. Give your opinions, give your thoughts, give your suggestions. Right now is a tremendous time where we all need to focus on the ag tags, which used to be called red tags, and also this deer management assistance program, because
It has changed. Anybody wanting to get involved, that it has changed, just so people can
Yep.
check into it.
Absolutely. And, we're going to wrap it up for today. And certainly in the future, I want to have these guys back on to continue these conversations because there's just so much here to talk about. The game lands alone is like, we could talk for hours just about the game lands management and having strategic management plans. But, I thank you guys again. I hope to see everybody at the not only the 15th of March, but also March 27th. I'm actually going to be on a panel discussing general permitting reform, which has huge implications for farming and agriculture as a whole. So by all means, follow my Facebook page. I'll have information about that. But again, I want to give a special thanks to our sponsors, the Mariana Outdoorsman Association. You can join today at marianaoutdoors.com. Wild Acres Farm, Fishery, and Regulated Hunting Grounds. Go check us out at 10mileco.org. All your guided hunts await. Fishing trips, hunting trips, etc. 724-579-0924. I'm Jason White. This is Great Outdoors, and we'll see you next week.